The Dragon Who Cheated.
The kingdom of Ergberg under UG was as pleasant a little place as you could wish to find. In fact, it was a great deal more pleasant than most people would dream of wishing to find. It was beautiful sunshiny summer all the year, except on the 15th of March when there was always a slight snowstorm. But owing to a special arrangement that had something to do with leap years and that kind of thing, the 15th of March occurred only twice in 10 years in Ergberg under UG. Then again, the king and queen of Ergberg under UG were two exceedingly charming people, and about the only law that was ever enforced in the kingdom was one which said that no one was to be unhappy. There was a special force of joyous policemen employed particularly to see that this law was not disobeyed. If anyone fell over and hurt himself, or dropped down a grating a penny that he was going to buy sweets with or anything like that, these joyous policemen would make funny faces and give them new pennies which the king secretly provided himself. That will just show you how nice it was in the kingdom of Ergberg. There were only two things wrong with the kingdom of Ergberg under UG. One of them was its name, which was slightly difficult to say and definitely difficult to spell, but that didn't matter very much because nobody minded whether it was pronounced properly or not except the Ergberg Broadcasting Company, and they knew how to pronounce it. But there was a dragon in Ergberg, and a very unpleasant dragon at that. It arrived quite suddenly from goodness knows where, and started stamping on places and burning things up with its fiery breath, and kicking things down with its spiky feet. "This dragon business is most distressing," said the king, who had gathered all his ministers together to discuss what should be done. "What can we do to release the kingdom from such a monster?" "Perfectly simple, my dear Gilbert," said the queen, who wasn't supposed to be at the conference at all. "All you have to do is issue a proclamation and say that you offer half the kingdom and the hand of the princess in marriage to whoever shall slay the dragon." "But my dear Agnes," protested the king, "you know perfectly well we haven't a princess." "Neither we have," said the queen. "I was forgetting." She put her thumb in her mouth because it helped her to think. Then, remembering there was company present, if you can count ministers and chancellors as company, she hurriedly took it out again and said, "Well, we can still offer half the kingdom, and there'd be sure to be plenty of nice, strong, dragon-slaying sort of people who would be willing to do a spot of work for a prize like that." "That's right enough," said the king. "They might even be more willing to slay the dragon for half the kingdom alone than if they thought they had to marry a princess as well. I don't suppose all dragon-slaying people are very used to princesses, and it might put them out a bit. You know what I mean, having to turn half a kingdom into a little kingdom of its own and be majestic sort of majesties themselves, so that the princess should not feel homesick." "That's what I think," put in the prime minister. "I know a man who has a sister who used to know a friend who once heard of a dragon-slaying sort of man who slew a dragon to win half a kingdom and a princess, and he used to say—" "Now never mind what he used to say," broke in the queen, hurriedly, guessing that whatever it was it would take a long time to tell because she used to say things like that to her friends and it used to take her ages. "Let's think out the proclamation." "Certainly, my dear," said the king, licking his pencil which was copying ink, only he had forgotten, and it made his tongue all purple. "Let me see, how does this sound? Wanted, superior dragon slayer." "No, no," said the queen, "don't say superior. It doesn't matter what sort of a dragon slayer he is so long as he slays the dragon." "Pardon me, majesties," put in the Lord High Marshal of Heralds, who knew all about proclamations because he used to be a herald in another kingdom before he came to Ergberg, and had shouted many a one round the streets. "Pardon me, but if I might make so bold as to say so, proclamations ought to start with oyez." "Oyez," said the king. "Oh, no," said the queen. "That is much too old-fashioned. We must be up to date." "Dragons are rather old-fashioned," put in the prime minister, who had not quite forgiven the queen for stopping him from telling them about the man that his friend's sister's acquaintance had heard of, and thought this was a chance to get his own back. But by this time the king, who had been writing away like anything on the back of an old piece of paper for several minutes, suddenly said, "Listen to this. Oyez, oyez, wanted, dragon slayer to slay dragon. That doesn't sound quite right, but I can't think of any other way of saying it. Half kingdom reward, no princess, no questions asked." At this, there was a tremendous babble of voices, as everybody started talking at once and saying how they thought the proclamation ought to go, and the noise became so loud that the king had to go outside and have a cannon or two let off to get silence. "Now, I'll tell you what we'll do," said the queen. "Everyone is to go away and write out in nice clear handwriting their own idea of a proclamation. Then we shall all meet again here at this time tomorrow, and there'll be a small prize for the one whose proclamation is considered the best." Everybody applauded this idea except the king, who guessed that he would have to pay for the little present, but before he could say anything, the tea bell rang and everybody streamed out, headed by the queen, who was rather good at that sort of thing. Next day, at the appointed time, the proclamations were read out. The Lord Chancellor had written his in rhyme, because he liked to think he was rather a poet, although nobody else could bear to think it. "Oyez, oyez, and be it known, a dragon slayer's needed, to free the kingdom, save the throne, so let this call be heeded. And as reward for such as can, This monster overthrow, one half this land Elysian shall to the slayer go. What does Elysian mean? Asked the king, who had an aunt named Elizabeth Ann, and thought it might have something to do with her and didn't want to get aunts mixed up with state affairs. I don't like such as can, said the queen, and anyway, who said a proclamation had to rhyme? Next, please. Oyez, oyez, began the prime minister, then feeling that he had done quite well so far, he went on in a louder voice. Slay the dragon and win a handsome prize. Half the kingdom for a successful attempt. No entrance fee, no difficulties. Their Majesty's decision is final. That sounds as if a dragon was a sort of crossword puzzle, said the queen, who didn't hold with crossword puzzles because the king could do them better than she could. Next, please. This was the Lord High Marshal of Heralds. He popped up very quickly, and in a voice that could be heard all over the place, read out, Oyez, oyez, oyez. Whereas the kingdom of Ergberg under UG is suffering under the onslaughts of a dragon, be it known that we, by our royal privilege, do hereby offer half the said kingdom, together with all the appurtenances thereof, as prize or reward to whomsoever shall slay the monster, given under our hand this so-and-so day. Of course, that was by far the best attempt of any, but the king said he thought the Lord High Marshal of Heralds knew too much about proclamations. Then the rest of them had a go at reading out their attempts, except 2 of the ministers who had not been able to get any further than chewing the end of a pencil, and 1 who had been looking over the Lord Chancellor's shoulder, but hadn't been able to read his writing. Well, said the queen rather briskly, I did one myself. She read out, Oyez, oyez. We have had the most terrible dragon ravishing the kingdom lately, and what do you think it's been doing? I mean to say, too devastating, you know. Why, my dears, positively stamping on places and all that. Something must be done about it, so the king and myself thought that if we could get someone to slay the dragon, because we feel sure that nobody really likes the nasty thing, we would give him half the kingdom for his trouble. So, here, here, broke in the king. Don't applaud until I've finished, said the queen, thinking he meant an applauding sort of thing like, here, here. But you can't have a proclamation like that, said the king. Then the king and queen started arguing, partly about the proclamation but very much more so about the small prize, chiefly because the queen's idea of a small prize was a very big one. I tell you what we'll do, said the king at last. You shall have a nice diamond necklace for your prize for the proclamation, but we'll use the Lord High Marshal of Heralds proclamation because it sounds better. All right, replied the queen, who didn't mind so long as she got the prize, and as nobody else minded either because the king promised them all consolation prizes, the matter was settled. But although the proclamation was settled, the dragon wasn't, and next day news came that he had kicked down 2 more castles. The dragon sat at the mouth of his cave cleaning his claws with a tree trunk. Huh, he growled. So they want to get me killed, do they? I'll teach them to send out proclamations. I'll teach them a thing or 2 about killing dragons. He had heard the proclamation read out because he had rather good ears, and 4 of them at that, 2 on each of his 2 heads. Disgraceful, I call it, said one head. I've got an idea, said the other. Well, out with it, said the first. PSP, PSP, said the other, trying to whisper. What say? Said the first head. Get suit of armor, disguise self as champion, pretend kill own self, claim half kingdom as reward. Good idea, but don't talk like telegram, said the first head, talking like one itself. The dragon shook one head and nodded the other, and went round to one of the castles he had kicked down and rummaged about to find some armor. He had a very severe portion of trouble getting himself into the armor, partly because his tail was rather long, and he had to wind it round himself, which made him rather fat, and partly because he had to get both his heads into one helmet. They say 2 heads are better than 1, said the first head. I can't see it myself, said the second. Move over a bit, said the first. At last the dragon got himself all fastened up by using about 4.5 suits of armor to cover him, and set out for the king's palace. Majesty, he said, bowing before the throne as he was ushered into the king's presence, I come as your champion. I will kill the dragon if you promise me the reward you have offered. He said this with both his heads at once, so it sounded nice and loud even, though the visor of his helmet was down so that no one could see he was really the dragon himself. Ask him to open his hat, said the queen, who was not used to people talking through their helmets at her, although she used to say that some of the ministers talked through their hats. But that, of course, was a different thing. Shush, whispered the king. You may upset him, and look what a nice big champion he is. No dragon will stand a chance against such a whopper. Then aloud he said, Certainly, go and slay the dragon. Bring back proof that you have slain it, and half the kingdom shall be yours. Majesty, boomed the dragon's 2 heads, it shall be done. And with a clatter and clang of all 4.5 suits of armor, he strode out of the palace with such a swish that all the blinds came down and 3 of the ministers thought it was nighttime and went to bed. Once again the dragon was sitting outside his cave, but this time he wasn't cleaning his claws. He was very carefully cutting a circular piece out of the side of a large tray. Then he put the tray on his shoulder with the cutout piece round one of his necks, held it there with one paw, put his other head on one side, and looked at his reflection in the pond. Excellent, said the first head. Looks just as if you are carrying the dragon's head on a tray, said the second head. Entirely satisfactory, said both heads together. The dragon put his helmet on again, putting it onto one head only this time, and back he went to the palace. He strode up the throne room, making the windows rattle as he went. He held the head on which he wore the helmet slightly on one side, and he kept the eyes on his other head closed, and as he held the tray on his shoulder, it looked for all the world as if he was a mighty champion bearing the head of the slain dragon on the tray. Cheers went up as he went by. Hurrah for the Dragon Slayer! Hail champion of Ergberg under UG. The dragon is slain. Majesty, said the dragon, being careful to talk only with the tip head that was inside the helmet. I have slain the dragon. See, I bring his head as proof. I come to claim my reward of half the kingdom. Lovely, said the queen, clapping her hands. What a horrid-looking dragon it was. Terrible, said the king. And the dragon, who didn't know whether he wanted to laugh because his plan was succeeding so well, or to be angry because they were saying such rude things about him, but who knew he mustn't do either until he got his reward, passed round the throne room, pretending to show off the head on the tray. Oh, dreadful situation, think of it. The dragon about to be given half the kingdom for slaying himself. Not that it would have mattered if he had slain himself, but of course he hadn't. He was tricking the king. He was tricking the entire kingdom. When he had got half the kingdom for himself, he would still go on ravaging the other half. Instead of Ergberg under UG being delivered from the dragon, it would be delivered to the dragon. Everything would be terrible. Oh, crafty monster. Oh, to think that nothing could be done to save the kingdom. The king stood up. According to the terms of the proclamation, he cried, I have much pleasure in presenting to our valiant champion one half of the kingdom of Ergberg under UG. Then, turning to the disguised dragon, won't you put the head down, sir, and take a cup of wine? Thought the dragon, can't put my own head down. I'd better pretend to be a bit dashing. Then aloud, Majesty, I prefer to keep the head of this monster as a trophy. The queen was just going to ask what a trophy was, when from amongst the spectators a young man pushed his way forward, and ran towards the dragon. Go back, cried the king. Go away. But the young man didn't go back or away. He ran forward with a small, bright object clasped firmly in his hand. It was a pepper box. He shook its contents onto the tray in front of the dragon's head. Arrest him! Roared the king. The guards had taken hardly a step when, Atishu! A most frightfully monstrous noise rang out. The head of the supposed-to-be slain dragon had sneezed. Pandemonium raged. The cheers that had gone up before gave place to screams of fear and howls of alarm. The king jumped up so suddenly that he kicked the throne over backwards and the queen with it, but happily she fell on some cushions. He is no champion, said the young man, pointing to the dragon who had torn the helmet off his other head and was beginning to puff out sparks. He is the dragon himself. Ha, roared the dragon in a voice that blew all the guards' hats off in a shower. Yes, I am the dragon, and I will have not half the kingdom but all of it. It's just my dinner time. What? A meal I'll have. He rolled his eyes round the throne room and blew out a jet of blue flame. 47 duchesses fainted all at once. The Lord Chamberlain climbed up on the chandelier. The Prime Minister and the Lord Chief Justice tried to get up the chimney but got stuck halfway. The dragon advanced, a terrifying form, upon the young man. Have at ye, cried the young man, who had read in a book that champions always said that when attacking the foe. He drew his sword with a flourish. Horrors! The blade flew off the handle. Ergberg under UG was undone. The last hope was gone. No, it wasn't. Marvels of all marvels. The shining sword blade flew like a streak of silver across the room, and through both the dragons' heads at once, skewering them like an enormous pennyworth of cat's meat. With a sensational crash that shook all the pictures down in the queen's spare bedroom, the dragon fell lifeless to the floor. Serve him right for cheating. The pieces of armor from his 4.5 suits rolled and clanged all over the place, like so many milk churns or even more. More cheers went up. 46 of the fainted duchesses came unfainted again and asked for cups of tea. The queen climbed out of the cushions and helped the king stand the throne up again. The Lord Chamberlain dropped off the chandelier with a loud bong into the middle of the floor, but didn't hurt himself much as he wore thick trousers. The Prime Minister and the Lord Chief Justice came out of the chimney, followed by a large helping of soot. The kingdom of Ergberg under UG was saved. But tell me, said the king to the young man, when they were sitting down to a nice banquet to celebrate the great occasion, who are you, and how did you guess the dragon's trick? I am Prince Didonot-Dotumwon, said the young man. My kingdom, which is near here, was stamped out of existence by the dragon the Thursday before last. I followed him and saw him preparing to trick you into giving him half your kingdom. Splendid, said the king. Now you can have half of my kingdom and marry the princess, and everything will be all lovely.